Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. Whether it's live trials or splashy legal headlines, we are here for the facts in the law and no nonsense. Well, unless it comes from our furry four-legged friends, of course. Here's where you bring your unique perspective to agree or disagree with other people, but please, always in a way that's civil and productive. After all, we're here to get to the bottom of the truth with a capital T, and the best way to do that, of course, is with healthy dialogue. So, if that's what you're looking for, jump on in. We would love to have you. Let's get started. All right, you guys, you can see here, this is the Law and Crime page. Let's see, I've got the sound. Oh, whoops. Did not mean to do that. I've got the sound muted. Here we go. Wait a second. I just realized the stream is still on unlisted. There we go. Hang on. Oh, shoot. Okay. Here we go. That ought to fix it. I was moving so quickly. Hang on. I'm also hearing myself in echo, which is always so frustrating. I'm sorry, guys. Like I said, I'm trying to move very quickly here. And oftentimes that means things get a little bit wonky. Okay, we're connected to the computer. It's because I didn't. Okay, never mind. I figured it out. There we go. Got it. And now Indy's with us, snoozing as per usual. Take a look at that. Take a look at that. It's because it's late here. She's ready for this verdict. She is so ready for this verdict. I don't know about you guys. I am ready for this verdict for sure. I'm sure the jury is ready to go home. Doctor Who 8675309. Why is Alita wearing orange? Is that an orange jumpsuit? It's not. It's actually. It probably looks orange to you guys because of the lighting, but it's actually like a bright coral. So I think my lighting is maybe just a little bit yellowish. Maybe that's why it looks more orange. But hey, maybe that means guilty. Okay, give me 1 second. I've got to do a couple more social media posts, and then I really didn't want to miss anything. So I wanted to just go ahead and go live, start chatting with you guys, and then getting to what all of us really want to see here, right? Is it guilty or is it not guilty? I think at this point, it's probably not a hung jury. That's what I would hang my hat on in this moment. It's not a hung jury. I think that if it probably would have gone to tomorrow before they would have gone to a hung jury. I don't know, but what do you guys think? Let's start a poll, shall we? Is it guilty or not guilty? How about that? And unlike the previous polls that we've done, this is not what you think it would be, but what you think or not what you think you would vote, but what you think it is. Okay, and then one more thing that I've got to do here. All right. Almost finished. Okay. All right. All right. Good to see you all. All the happy squirrels. It feels like deliberations took longer for James than for Jennifer, or am I imagining that? I think it still was longer for Jennifer than for James. So from what I saw, which is definitely an interesting thing, because I think that like I said before, I didn't pay as close attention to the Jennifer Crumbley trial because I was just kind of watching the highlights and some of the big things that people were talking about coming out of that trial, and throughout trial, but like some of the finer details, I wasn't watching. It is my understanding, however, that the defense counsel in the James Crumbley trial is better than the defense counsel in the Jennifer Crumbley trial. I just remember hearing so many complaints, and also having watched the opening statements and in the Jennifer Crumbley trial, I was not exactly excited about what the defense had to offer after that. Law nerd Debbie, hi all. I thought they went home for the night. Glad I got the notification. Very glad to have you here, because they typically go home at 5, but there was a request right before 5 to be able to stay later, and so there was no indication as to how late they would go if they wanted to stay later. But usually when that happens, that does mean that they're going to be probably pretty close to a verdict. All right, here's a defendant coming in. Sophia and Nia, love your dog. Thank you. She's very sweet. She loves you too. Oh man. Love the fur babies. Thank you so much, Christina Rain. Lara K, what time is it for you? Well, let's just say it's late. It's probably best if I don't say. I don't want to think too hard about it, I guess.
Court is now in session. The Honorable Shirley Matthews presiding.
All right. Judges in the room.
Good evening. Your Honor, calling People versus James Crumbley, case number 22-279-989 FH.
Thank you, Mark. Case on behalf of People.
Karen McDonald, on behalf.
Excuse me, Your Honor, Marielle Lehman on behalf of James Crumbley.
Mr. Crumbley, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, you can be seated. I want to indicate, first of all, there was a question the media was dying to know about. I'm going to read that into the record. I consulted with the attorneys who answered the question, and so then I sent the question back in. They agreed on the answer. The jury asked, please define Article 16.13, bullet number 4, define willfully neglected and grossly negligent. The lawyers agreed to answer the question. Please see jury instruction 16.18 for the definition of gross negligence. All other definitions are contained within jury instruction 16.13. I also want to point out that there's a request by the media to ask the jury members if they would be willing to remain in the courthouse and be questioned off camera. Because there would be a verdict and no other defendant pending trial, I would have been willing to do that. But the courthouse closes at 4:30, and I have continually imposed on the courthouse for the sake of this trial and the other one. I cannot impose on the staff for the deputies any further. I also want to indicate that with regard to case number 22-279990 FH, the People versus Jennifer Crumbley, there is an order restricting pretrial publicity. It was entered on July 14th, 2022. That order will be set aside as soon as the verdict is read. I will also be issuing an order that will obviously not be made public in the courthouse until tomorrow morning. In addition, case number 22-279989 FH, the People versus James Crumbley, the same thing. The order restricting pretrial publicity was entered on July 14th, 2022, and that order will also be set aside as of the reading of the verdict. Are you ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ready for the jury. All right, Desperate Breeze, thanks so much for your super chat. According to Court TV, 10 hours, 12 minutes for James, 10 hours, 48 minutes for Jennifer. So just under the wire. Maria Antoinette, thanks so much for the super chat. Michigander here. I believe they're going to find him guilty. I kind of think so too. I have to remember to end the poll before well, maybe I should do it now. I'll give you guys like one more minute. Once they sit down, I'll end the poll, because that'll indicate that the jury is in the room. So I don't want the actual results to spoil the poll results, right? Of course, in my poll, in this one, it probably would have been a valid choice to say hung jury. But I don't think it's going to be a hung jury, just because it's still too soon for a hung jury, even if they, in my opinion, I don't know. Judges have made that call sooner. I, of course, don't know what the communications have been from the jury to the judge, if anything, indicating whether they are close or far from any sort of a verdict. But like I said, them saying that they are, that they wanted to stay late is an indication.
Good evening. Good evening. Seated.
And yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen,
she's broken.
I know
What can I
you've worked
say?
very hard, but we've all been awaiting your decision. I know this was a very intense decision for you all to make.
Ending the poll
I
now.
believe you've selected a four-person. Who's it, four-person? You're the four-person. Could you read the verdict, please?
Each count.
Sure.
So 83% said
Count
they're
one, involuntary
guilty.
manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter
Guilty.
as to Madison Baldwin. Count two,
All of them.
involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir. Count three, involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana. Count four, involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling.
Thank you, foreperson. I'm going to ask that Ms. Williams pull the jury. So she's going to ask you.
Okay.
Juror in seat
That's
number
it.
1, was that and
Guilty
is
on
that
everything.
your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 2, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 3, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 4, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 6, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 7, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 8, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 9, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 11, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 12, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror in seat number 13, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Juror in seat number 14,
Oh, that's one of
was
the
that and
dads.
is that your verdict?
It is.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know how
Yeah,
hard
this is
this has
family
been
right
on
there.
all of you, just by reading your face. I know this has been a very hard decision. We appreciate your time. I'm going to ask you to return to the jury room, and I'll be there with you in a few minutes, all right?
All rise for the jury.
Yeah, Draco, I mean, that wasn't the jury. That was the gallery. I think that was probably family members. Oh boy.
All right, you may be seated. Bond is revoked. Sentencing will be April 9th at 9 o'clock in the morning. All right. I'll allow both sides to speak to the jury if they're interested. All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
If everyone can just remain seated.
All right. Judge is walking out. Princess, did they all share eggs? None of the jurors were excused in this trial. Okay. Andy, thank you so much for gifting 10 Legalbytes memberships. So kind and generous of you for gifting once again. So Culperistic, Kelly D, Shantaray Wilkins, Lady Draconis, Lawnard Debbie, Stone, formerly known as MD, Lady Mook, Empathy Enzima, Brandon Graham. You have all been gifted memberships by Sandy. So welcome or welcome back to Bike Club. Very happy to have you guys. And thanks again, Sandy. Very, very kind. And there he goes. So sentencing will be on a different date. Okay, let's get some questions here, shall we? And also, yes, I did not mention this, Sandy. Thanks for the reminder. Bike Club, we've got casual Friday members only live stream. So those of you that are new to Bike Club or returning to Bike Club, tomorrow, 10 a.m. East Coast time, we've got another casual hangout live stream scheduled. So hope you guys can join. All right. Prosecution is hugging the families on their way out. So I'm going to keep an eye out for any kind of statements that might be made.
Okay.
All right, defense attorney walking out. I'm sure there's going to be some statements. All right, I'm going to mute that for now so that we can I think, once they start showing something, I'm sure Long Crime will show us if there's some kind of a statement, and I'm sure there will be one. So then once they do, we will pull that up as well. Mark Molina, was he offered a plea deal? I don't think so. I've looked for that. I haven't seen any kind of articles about that. Something tells me they had no intent on any kind of a plea deal. I mean, usually, if something like that happens, it's not usually, but oftentimes it's because they want like some kind of a bigger fish. Think like, David Hall's in the Rust shooting case. It's helpful to have his testimony against Alec Baldwin as an example. So I don't think he was. Let's see here. Maria Antoinette, thanks for another super chat. I personally was torn. James lost his mother, job, and dog around that time. That doesn't excuse his negligence, but I can understand. I mean, look, you can have empathy for someone and the position that they're in the state that they're in, and still think that they are, culpable, that they're responsible, that they're liable. I mean, yeah, I talked about this in the earlier recap live stream today, talking about days 4 and 5, that, I kind of was struck with the possibility that he may have been dealing with depression around this time. I mean, I wasn't even talking about losing his mother, losing his dog, but the job aspect, I think that can hit a husband and a father pretty hard sometimes. I mean, it can hit anyone really, but especially if you are wanting to provide for your family, that can hit someone pretty hard. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me that he was going through some things and like just was unable to see the signs in front of him, the things in front of him. I know that there also was evidence that came out in the Jennifer Crumbley trial about her alleged infidelity. I say alleged because I wasn't watching that part of the trial, so I don't know how clear that evidence was of her having an affair. So that obviously, if he knew about it at the time, that also would definitely add to it. Okay. Formerly known as MD, check WXYZ Detroit for statements. Thank you. That is a good call. I'm actually going to, let's refresh here. See if there's anything. There's also Fox 2 Detroit. Okay. So far, I don't see. Okay. Yeah. So far, I don't see any statements here, but I'm going to continue to keep an eye on it. Daryl, does this mean a precedent has been set and now parents can be held accountable in these cases going forward? I think a lot of people are saying that. A lot of people are saying that this definitely is a precedent, right? Because that's never happened with a school shooting case before Jennifer Crumbley's trial, right? So before this incident. And so I think that there may be other jurisdictions that will take a look at what their involuntary manslaughter says, in terms of their jurisdiction, their definition, and see if that is something that is applicable in those situations. But keep in mind, you have to have a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of control, a certain level of what you should have known and should have done. I think that, this may cause some people who own firearms, who own dangerous substances in their home, to maybe increase a little bit of security around those things. And I think that for this one, for James Crumbley in particular, I think that what really drove this home for a lot of people was the fact that it was kind of simple things that could have been done in order to prevent this. And it's like when you have a simple solution to prevent a massive, massive tragedy, it's hard for people to look at that situation and be like, yeah, of course. You absolutely should have done those things. Of course, hindsight is always 2020. And it could very well be that he was impacted by the things that were also going on in his life. But But yeah. So anyway, yeah. I think yeah, there may be some precedents here, but this also is something that is, like I said before, it's a bit of a unique case. Miss Fitness 3, why didn't he have to stand during the verdict? I think that's a courtroom thing. That can be different from place to place, from courtroom to courtroom, between different jurisdictions. Joe, I can't remember how much time could he get, up to 15 years. And I think that's per charge. I haven't looked at the sentencing guidelines to see if that is consecutive or concurrent. So meaning, is it one charge after another, or one conviction after another, totaling up to 60 years, or would they all be at the same time, meaning up to 15 years max? I don't know the answer to that, but that's about what I can tell you. Nick Wilson, is he being sentenced at the same time as his wife? I don't know that. I'm not sure. Jerry, I think what the judge said actually was that they're going to be coming back tomorrow to schedule the sentencing. I think she just wanted to get out of there because it's such a late day. Jerry Roth, I'm back celebrating my birthday with my wife today. Wait, was there a verdict? Happy birthday, Jerry Roth. Good to see you. Thanks for popping in amidst all of these celebrations there. And yes, there was. He's guilty. Also from Jerry Roth, does this now set a precedent that the parents can be charged in school shootings now if they knowingly give a mentally ill child a gun? Yeah, I think so. I think the knowingly for sure. Like if they knowingly, because it's like you know, there are all kinds of restrictions around firearms, even though it's Second Amendment is very, very strong in the United States, the Second Amendment protection. And yet there still are some restrictions and mental health issues. That's one of them that people often talk about. But this could definitely start a trend for sure. And also, just to clarify, Jules Abelful, usually precedence is set by higher courts where I live. Is that the same over in the USA/Michigan? So yes. So when we can talk about two different types of precedent, right? There is the precedent, like the kind of, oh, hang on a second. We might be getting, okay.
All right. Okay, we're being told there's going to be a press conference in 30 minutes. 30 minutes for press conference, right? Okay. All right. So there we go. Karen McDonald right there, and Lieutenant Timothy Willis right there. The lead on this, and Mark Keats, the lead prosecutor on this case, followed by a team of prosecutors here going through the hallway. And whoops, there's more prosecutors. How many prosecutors do they have? The whole office is here. Anyway, these are all prosecutors. There's one of the testimony, one of the Waglowski.
Witnesses.
He is the special agent. He's now with the Secret Service, and he was the one that put together the video of the actual high school shooting. So there you go. They have left. I don't know where the press conference is going to be. Probably in Karen McDonald's office, which is actually in this other wing of the court. 30 minutes will be there for that as well. I would imagine that obviously the gag order is lifted then, so the prosecutor can talk. So obviously you saw the team of prosecutors. Listen,
okay. Anyway, we don't need all of that. But yeah, okay. So in 30 minutes it'll be, if we're still streaming, then we'll show it. But if not, then we and that's the state. So maybe defense will have their own press conference. So we'll see. Okay. So yeah, so talking about this, two different meanings for precedents, right? That you have either legal precedent, right? Where it's, some appellate court has made some sort of a decision. And when we talk about that, what we're talking about is there are two different types of legal authority. There is persuasive authority and there's binding authority. Persuasive authority is when, some other court in some other jurisdiction has used some reasoning that sounds pretty good. Like it's pretty reasonable, right? And so, you might be in some other court and say, this is really, really good reasoning. We should apply that to our case. Persuasive. You've got to persuade the court to take on that reasoning in this case. Then there's binding authority, which is where, in the hierarchy of cases, a higher level court has made a particular decision on something. And so the courts that are underneath it have to follow the decisions of the higher level courts, unless there are ways of distinguishing those. So binding authority, meaning, they're bound by the higher level appellate courts. So that's, typically when we're talking about a precedent, that's what we're talking about. But here, what we're more talking about when we mention the word precedent is more about like a trend. Like, is this going to start a trend? Does this mean that there will be more people who will be prosecuted because of the actions of their kids, regarding firearms? So that's what we are talking about here in this case. All right. Ollie's GG Julie. Alita, where do you live that it's so late? Well, I'm in Europe. So it is a bit late. It is a little bit late. Also, John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. I was expecting guilty since it was a gun case, but I would not have voted that way. Bites, where did you land on this one? On this one, actually, I was leaning guilty. I was leaning guilty because I think there just was so much here that just seemed like this was a father that was not paying attention to signs that were being actively flagged for him. And although this wasn't a case where someone, had a very long runway of like behavior, right? Of the school saying there's a problem, right? Because the first time that the school flagged anything was the day before the shooting on the 29th. The level of the things that were happening should have been enough to trigger for him to say, wait a minute, there's a huge problem here. We need to record scratch, freeze frame. We've got to do something about this right now because this is immediately necessary. I just, I try to take a step back and consider the fact that I am not a parent myself. And so, I don't want to be when you're not a parent, it can be so tempting to say, well, I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that. And this is how I would do things. And then you actually become a parent and everything changes, everything goes out the window, right? Because then you realize, oh no, all of those ideas that I thought I had about parenthood are are totally like wonky and not reality, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I say this from the experience of watching very closely friends and family members and siblings and all kinds of people, and watching that sort of progression of that mental state very, very closely. So, I have that understanding also about parenthood and about these kinds of things, but it's just, to me, if the school was flagging these issues to them, didn't even know that they had firearms at home, arguably they should have asked. Yes, I agree. The school failed in some ways, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that the parents also didn't fail. So to me, between the mental health issues that should have been detected especially because it was their only kid. Like, it's not like they've got like a number of kids and it's like, a rotating door of extracurricular activities and everything's got this like frenetic pace. It just seems like things were just sort of fractured in this family and people were not paying attention to what was going on in it. In a sense, it kind of reminds me of like some similar themes to like the movie American Beauty. It's a real tragedy of the American family here in this case. But I think that, there were some mental health issues that were being flagged, actively being flagged by other people. And even though it was a short runway, they should have been caught. So that's my thought on that. All right. Lisa NJ, if HGR from Rust could be found guilty even though she didn't fire the gun, then these parents who didn't lock their gun can be found guilty too. I mean, that's the thing about involuntary manslaughter, right? Is it's not the person who actually like fired the gun, right? Who actually pulled the trigger. But there's some other sort of responsibility around firearms that the message is being given here, that there are still responsibilities that other people have around these things because of how dangerous they are. Like I said, the Second Amendment is a very important amendment, and I absolutely agree that there are certain rights that are very important to maintain a stance against, potential tyranny, which is like, at this point, it's hypothetical in the United States, right? Like there's no immediate threat of tyranny that seems foreseeable at this point in time, right? However, I'm an American because my family, my mom's side, fled the Soviet Union because they were going to be sent to Siberia. They were literally on a list. So I have a very strong understanding of like how these things can happen. So Second Amendment is very important, but this message with some of these more recent cases here really is being sent that there's a lot of power in these things. They're very important to American society, especially certain parts of American society, and yet there's a lot of responsibility that needs to be taken for them as well. All right. Let's see here. Doctor Who 8675309. Do judges normally talk with jurors after the trial? Judges, so here's the thing about judges. So I don't know if you guys remember the Parkland school shooting sentencing trial, where the judge there ended up stepping down. She said that she was already planning to step down, Judge Scherer. And now she's like, she's become this big talking head, with law and crime, it seems like. They keep wanting to talk to her, but there was a lot of controversy at the end of this. There was a lot of controversy throughout that sentencing trial, but having to do with a lot of the remarks that she was making and fights that she was having specifically with the with the public defender's office. And at the end of trial, she drew a lot of criticism, and in my opinion, rightfully so, for stepping out and hugging the families of the victims. It's just one of those things that you don't like to see, because of the fact that it looks like this is all in celebration of him getting sentenced, and it looks like she's pro prosecution. It looks like she's anti-defense, which you never want to have with any judge. You've got to have the appearance of impartiality. She's going to have her own opinions on things. Absolutely. She's going to have her opinions on whether someone should be guilty or not guilty, whether certain charges should have been brought in the first place. Like, judges, of course, are human beings. They have their own opinions. The problem is that when they go and make those opinions seemingly clear to the public, it calls into question all of the decisions that they've made with other cases, with other criminal defendants, and on top of that, all of the other cases that are yet to come. So that's just, yeah. So, talking with jurors after the trial is something that a lot of judges are going to be very wary about for that specific reason. Maria Antoinette, thanks so much for the super chat. My son attended the high school in the same county. He suffered from depression after my brother died. When showed signs of depression, the school made me find a therapist that day. I'm a single parent. I mean, there are some schools that are going to act very quickly and successfully intervene in those kinds of situations. Unfortunately, they don't always get all of them right. Some school administrations are better than others. It's there are some cases that are better and worse in their outcomes. And I hope that your son ended up having a better outcome after finding that therapist. And also, thanks so much for this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Yes, yes. If anybody is watching this and you have not liked this video and you are enjoying the coverage, please do hit like. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods, and also subscribe for sure, because, you know, we'll be covering more stuff like this, more trials. I'll be doing some more gavel to gavel coverage as well with some other trials. And so there's going to be a lot more of this kind of stuff coming. Eric K. If you buy a car for your teenager and your teen takes the keys without your permission and kills multiple people by crashing into them, are we going to charge the parents for buying the dangerous car? So I completely understand the metaphor that you are drawing here, because, you know, a car is also a dangerous weapon, right? This has also been determined to be a dangerous weapon under the law during, especially, you know, using certain circumstances. I think that it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison, though, because there are ways of, like, let's take this back for a second. You know, in this hypothetical, there's nothing about mental health. In this particular case, there was a lot about mental health. And that was one of the big things that was really bad for the defense here, was that the massive mental health issues of their son, and the evidence here that he was doing something wrong. If this were a situation where someone knew that their kid was totally unhinged for some reason, there's something going on, you know, and they, you know, they had some sort of idea, an idea that this kid was, you know, something was very seriously wrong. I don't know that that would be enough for, you know, for keys being made available, for that to be something that would be worthy of charging someone if the kid decided to go, you know, take the car for an angry drive and kill multiple people by crashing into them. I mean, there's also other factors in there, like, was he intentionally doing that? Was this something that he, you know, was that something that he, you know, like, was alcohol involved? Like this is the kind of thing that, you know, the expectation of having your keys locked up, that's not really a thing that we expect. However, there is an expectation that people lock up their firearms. So I don't know. Like, I understand the comparison that you're drawing. I just think that it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison here. John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat from USSR. Very interesting. Did you watch the Putin interview? There's no need to comment on if you liked it or not. Just curious if you followed. Thanks. Sorry, kind of off topic. Yeah, no, it definitely is off topic. I did see it. And technically my family is not from the USSR. They were fleeing the USSR. They're from Lithuania. So nuanced difference, but to those that are from there, it you know, yeah, it makes a difference. Thanks so much for the super chat. Yeah, Lisa NJ, this is something that kind of makes me, you know, that I think I would agree with. If your kid is drunk and with alcohol you gave him and he got the car keys, then you would be liable. That's what the school drove home to us at the parent assembly at prom time. Yes. I mean, that absolutely would be the case, you know. The Sky Forge didn't watch the case, but if instead of a gun, this had been a case of a stabbing where he took a kitchen knife from a drawer at home, does that change anything? Do we need to lock everything up now? I mean, these are absolutely valid questions. These are absolutely valid questions. But I don't think that there is a reasonable expectation that people lock up their kitchen knives. You know, same thing with the car keys. Other than, you know, if there's a party and you've got people over and there's alcohol being served, and, you know, you willingly hand keys to somebody and you know, knowing that they are very, very, very drunk, there's a certain level of responsibility because of what you know about the risks that are potentially being created and what you are actually actively disregarding, you know. So it's the same thing with this kind of stuff. You know, there obviously are dangers everywhere. There are all kinds of ways that people can harm themselves and others. And unfortunately, it sucks. But the main question here, like I said, is it came down to criminal negligence, which is essentially recklessness. did they know, or should they have known, of a danger that they were creating, or that they were, that they were helping to create by doing something or by failing to do something? And in acknowledging on some level in their brain this increased level of risk, were they consciously disregarding it? Like that's really what it comes down to. Alrighty, moving this down here. And let's see here if there are other questions that I may have missed. Okay, was there anything that I saved here that I didn't answer? Okay. But I really do appreciate also, those of you that are disagreeing with me and pressing on that, because like, this is not a channel where we all have to agree on everything, not by a long shot, but that's how we get to truth with a capital T, after all, right? So I do like the fact that folks are pushing when they do disagree, because it helps to test these ideas, and if that at the end of the day is what you're trying to get at, then that's the way to do it. So Katoa, hi, did I miss the verdict? Yes. It was in the first 15 minutes, I want to say 10 minutes of the stream. So you can go back and watch it if you want. Otherwise I can also spoil it for you if you would like. Darren Peach, Pandora's box, the kid would have found a way. Well, the thing about that though is that would have been his responsibility and only his responsibility. The fact that someone, the fact that we could say that someone was determined to find a way to do it doesn't mean that the people around him are removed of all responsibility for doing what they need to do to keep their dangerous items safe. Right. I mean, it's like the same thing as if somebody is housing a tiger in their backyard, right? Like you're housing that tiger. You might have your own reasons for housing it, but that is a dangerous animal. That is a wild animal. And if that animal harms anyone, you are responsible, regardless of like whether you thought that you could have predicted it. You thought this was like, totally trained up and, it had never acted out, before. You can still end up being absolutely, this is that I'm really talking about strict liability here, where you have a dangerous wild animal in your possession and then it harms someone. You don't even necessarily need to prove a lot of mental state elements for something like that, because a lot of states have laws on strict liability for something like that. There are some items in this world that are so dangerous that the law says doesn't matter what you thought. It doesn't matter what you thought or what you thought you knew. So anyway, so the fact that it may have been inevitable, we can hypothesize that, but we don't necessarily know that for a fact. And prototopics, David, good to see you. I have 3 tigers in my backyard right now. Well, just make sure that they are maybe in a very large cage. So Katoa, this was Arizona, correct? Are these involuntary manslaughter charges in the same in every state? I'm not sure if I asked that right. So this was actually in Michigan, and no, it can change from state to state based on the jurisdiction. For example, in New Mexico, remember, involuntary manslaughter gets Hannah Gutierrez Reed max of 18 months. Here in Michigan, in this case, they're looking at a max of 15 years. So that is quite a bit. So anyway, but like I was saying before, it's that, if you're housing an item that is considered to be incredibly dangerous, you bear the responsibility for the safety of that item. And the thing is, if you know you've got a teenager that has issues, that is having issues, and the thing is, like, maybe there are some specifics that James said that he didn't know, but he volunteered some information to the police. He volunteered the fact that his kid was having a hard time because of the fact that his best friend had just moved away. That's an issue, right? Like that's a problem for the defense. That's him volunteering that his son is having an issue with, that is affecting his mental or emotional state. Uh, are there people who think that that their kid is going to turn into a murderous rage because of that? I'm sure there are plenty of people that would be like, I'm really concerned about my kid, but like never would expect that to happen. And it could also be that they, you know, leaned into going to gun ranges and going to, do firearms and stuff because maybe Jennifer and James found that to be a calming thing, a calming sort of activity for them. Then maybe they thought that it would help with their kid or something. Turns out probably the opposite. But I mean, here we are. Maria Antoinette, thanks for another super chat. Do you believe that Jennifer's verdict played a role in his verdict? I felt that the wife was guilty, but the husband had legitimate distractions. No, I mean the jury is not supposed to know. I think that there were some people on the jury who indicated that they were aware of Jennifer Crumbley's trial, but they're not supposed to know that she's been found guilty because that could have an impact sometimes one way or another. I don't know how that would impact them in this case, the fact that there's already been someone who's been held responsible, but someone who is in kind of an identical role as this defendant, maybe that would be bad for the defense in that sense, but then maybe it would be good for the defense in the idea that someone has already been held responsible. Same thing with Ethan, right? I mean, he pled guilty. And now he's been sentenced to life without parole, although he's appealing that, and Jennifer Crumbley apparently is appealing her verdict as well. Like I said, it could go one way or another, depending on how the jury sort of views that. I'm sorry, that's not a very clear answer, but it is how I see it. So Katoa, you may have already answered this, but how does it change similar future cases? What would be the line for a parent's responsibility? Am I asking the college analysis questions? No, I mean, so we did talk about this a little bit before, but I can go into this a bit more again. In terms of, future similar cases, other jurisdictions might be more willing to sort of take a look at involuntary manslaughter for these kind of cases, where parents have made the firearms available. Does this mean that parents who own firearms, have a greater responsibility in making sure that their firearms are locked down? At least a reasonable responsibility, right? Yeah, I think so. I think that, every parent in the United States that has firearms, looking at this case, looking at the Jennifer Crumbley case, really should be looking at what they are doing to keep their firearms locked away, kept away from immature hands and improper hands, because there is a good chance that they could be held responsible if it finds its way into the wrong hands and they haven't done what they reasonably need to do in order to try to make those items a little bit less available to those other people. Right? Like if this Sig Sauer in this case had been, secured, whether you believe that a cable lock is really secure or is not. I know a lot of folks have said, okay, but cable lock can be cut with some tools. Okay, sure. But they have at least made some kind of a hurdle. They have made some kind of a hurdle for their kid to jump over. They haven't just made it super easy for him to walk up and grab it and throw some ammunition in it because it's right next to the gun as well. There's a certain message here that just because something could be circumvented does not give someone an out from the responsibility to do what they can to try to secure it. So, yeah. And like I said, criminal negligence is a big deal here. And that's something that would be required in any kind of those cases. What did they know? What did they have reason to know about what was going on? Could that have actually been foreseeable based on the information available? and the information available to them. It's different in every case. Eric K., the parents didn't have a lot of the information until an hour before the shooting. They hardly had time to process what it meant, but double checked anyway. I mean, arguably they had the day before, right? They had the voicemail about the him viewing bullets in class. I think that the fact that James Crumbley rushed home when he got wind of the shooting happening, indicates to me that he was capable of making a very fast connection and fast action if he made that neural connection. But it seems like he just didn't. He wasn't paying attention, it seems like, until it was too late. So, I agree that there was a very short runway for this. But given how strong that was in my opinion as to like what those circumstances were, I think that that it anyone is capable, and he certainly showed that he was capable of jumping into action. So Colfax 13 is about reasonable measures to prevent the event. Yes. Yeah. Let's see here. Moving on down. Yeah. I mean, there's also, Diana May Designs. He was expressing mental issues prior to them buying him the gun too. That's at least a week before. And to be fair to the defense on that one, this was like definitely secondhand circumstantial evidence about this, right? There were indications in his journal and indications from things that he had texted to his friend. We can't necessarily take that at its face value that he's actually telling the truth on that. Maybe he is, but maybe he's not. It's a lot harder to use that than say if there was an actual text message from Ethan to James saying, "I'm having a hard time," and then James texting back, "Suck it up." You know what I mean? But there certainly were repetitions of Ethan saying that he had tried to reach out to his parents and they basically snubbed him. They basically ignored him. All of these things. And so with that, there was quite a bit of evidence of, them having at least notice of the issues that, that he said that he was having. All right. Kaylee H, how much time do you think they'll get? I'm not sure, honestly, in order to, oh man. Okay. Sorry. The feed that I was just watching just ended, the live stream feed. So we don't quite have. All right. I'll bring up Law and Crime again. Okay. Press conference to begin shortly. Okay. So I'll just show you guys real quick. Yeah. Okay. So we've got that all queued up. So how much time do you think they'll get? I mean, like I said, max is 15 years. I don't know if that's consecutive. I don't know if that is concurrent. So it wouldn't surprise me if they got a pretty hefty sentence given the level of tragedy, but there will be a lot of factors that come into play. Things like, what has this person done in the community? Have they tried to do good in the past? Was this just a simple mistake? Do they have a history? I don't think that they have a criminal history here with Jennifer and James. I don't think that they would have been able to legally buy firearms if they did. So, so there is that. Oh, concurrent by law in Michigan, says Mr. Tim Beatty. Yeah, I haven't checked the sentencing guidelines, but if that's the case, then I guess it's up to 15 years max. Colfax 13, threatening someone from jail isn't going to be a good light. That could potentially be talked about at the sentencing hearing. That's not a good look for sure. It's definitely not a good look. All right, coming on down. Toe Roque. Is there such a thing as a joint trial? I just feel like the jurors knew that the wife was found guilty prior and having this done jointly, since the level of responsibility would be the same. There absolutely criminal defendants can be tried in the same trial. There are a number of factors that need to be managed, such as, how long is each trial? If you do them independently, how long is each trial going to be? What's the likelihood of witnesses being able to come back for a second trial or a third trial or however many trials that they would need? What's the overall efficiency to everyone? And also, of course, will this cause some sort of like great injustice to the defendant? So I don't know the specific reasoning for why they didn't try these two together. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that her verdict had any impact, because they weren't supposed to know about the verdict prior to joining the jury panel on this trial. John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. If a parent's first instinct when hearing of the school shooting was my son the shooter, definitely is concerning. It means that it seems to suggest, at least, that it was somewhere at the back of their mind that something like this could have happened. Maybe it seems to suggest that. It certainly does. I'm sure there are plenty of people that disagree with that would say, this is one of those things that, okay, a new piece of information has come in to change the analysis. That can happen too, right? Factors can come in to change the overall circumstances. And some people would probably argue that that's exactly what happened here. But I also completely understand the flip side, that folks say, like, why was that his first instinct, to say this is probably my son? What sort of information has now been drawn to the forefront? Sky Ricky, mental health is no longer something you put in a closet. Denying your child help makes you responsible for being negligent. I think that's likely increasingly something that I think a lot of people would agree with. Colfax 13, there was joint responsibility, but their arguments and actions to the events were different. So I understand why there were separate trials. Okay. That's fair. Like I said, I didn't cover the Jennifer Crumbley trial, and I didn't watch it in as close detail. So, I mean, I do understand that I remember that the jury in her trial, when the foreperson spoke to the media, said something about the fact that she was the last person to handle the gun before Ethan ended up using it at the school, was very, very material to them, which is interesting, because that would be an indication of, who locked up the gun, who was responsible for locking up the gun last, and that wasn't something that anybody asked in this trial. So that's interesting. Sleepy Cat, he found out she was cheating and probably wanted separate trials. That could be a factor. That could be. Ah, Keely H, their trials were severed a few months ago. Supposed to be together. Interesting. Okay, they asked for it to be severed in November, Kelly C. Okay. Eric K, this is an interesting point. Most gun owners I know tend to teach their children how to treat guns responsibly, even if locked. Odds are the parents have informed their teens how to access guns if needed for self-defense. So, yeah. I mean, and I'm saying this as somebody who learned how to handle firearms at age 14. That was my first time learning how to handle um, a few different types of firearms. I haven't been an active, gun range enthusiast since then. I mean, especially in the last like 15 years or something. But so I understand the value. Absolutely. As someone who learned as a teen how to understand and respect firearms and handle them properly. Um, because typically when you learn that, especially at a younger age, you learn how to respect the sheer power that is in this piece of metal, you know? So I definitely understand that. And I understand that most gun owners who have kids do teach their kids responsibly. I completely agree with that. I'm never going to be one to say gun owners are scum of the earth or anything like that. No, not at all. Not by a long shot. I know quite a few gun owners that are some of the most serious and responsible people that you could imagine handling firearms. Um, having spoken with some of them during the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, there were quite a few that were like, "What in the hell is going on here? Like, how did this happen?" Because of a very different standard in safety. So I understand what you're saying. But I don't know that everyone's going to agree on the part about informing their teens how to access the guns. And again, there's an important distinction there about mental health. I know that folks that I know that are gun enthusiasts that have kids also have very strong feelings about not wanting their kids to end up in some kind of a mishap where they could harm themselves or others. So there's also that side that, like, if there is any sort of a whiff of mental health issues, I know of those people that say, no way, I'm not keeping my kids near those things while they're going through some sort of an issue. All right, moving on down the chat, and we're still waiting on the press conference. And actually, one second here. Let me see if there's anything new here. Hang on Twitter, perhaps, because sometimes it doesn't show up on YouTube, but it shows up on Twitter. Like, for example, if the defense has decided to do make a statement. Okay, I don't see anything. Oh, wait, one second. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything so far. All right, Cam, thanks so much for the super chat. About to be done with law school. This is scary for future cases against parents. The jury has to believe that this was foreseeable, not hindsight. Yes. It's all about foreseeability. And that's why the mental health issue is such an important piece here in this case, right? Like, this is not just about, like, you've got a happy, a happy family that sometimes people get into scuffles. People have their low days, of course, just like anybody else. But, like, generally speaking, this is a relatively happy household, and you happen to have firearms, and you do what you can, generally speaking, reasonably to keep those firearms in a safe location and out of reach of, someone who shouldn't have them. This case is not about those people. This case is about the people that have some sort of an idea, or should have some sort of an idea, that there is something very, very, very seriously wrong with someone in their home, and then ignored that, and then made their firearms accessible. That's the difference here for me. But I do agree that this case rightfully would make parents who have firearms at home think twice about how they are storing those firearms. Completely agree. Just like people that decide to throw a party with alcohol, especially if it's a party with alcohol for young people, right? And then the prospect of them getting into a car and driving. So person supplying the alcohol can definitely be prosecuted. So yeah, thanks for the super chat. Moving on down. Well, this is another interesting point, Jason. I can't agree with what Sky said. Most people don't realize how far mentally gone someone is until it's too late. Slippery slope to put blame if they don't. Yes, I mean, I definitely understand that. People don't always make um people don't always make it apparent when they are struggling with something because oftentimes mental health struggle also comes with shame, comes with other stuff. So people don't necessarily feel a strong desire to make that known to people. The issue here is that there were indications, there were pieces of evidence here that did suggest that he was trying to make that apparent to his parents. So that's the difference there. Moving on down, looking at the chat. Sleepy Cat, it's a state law that makes the case specific too, right? Yeah, I mean, any incident that happens is going to need to be compared to the um to the statute of that state, to the criminal code in that state. And by and large, things are going to be relatively similar across most states, but around the edges there could be some nuance depending on the state, depending on the criminal code of that particular state. And also sometimes there is case law that can come in and help to sort of shape the outer edges as well. So yeah, I mean, I like I said, when we're talking about precedent, there's two different kinds that we can be talking about. There's the the trendsetter. Is this a trendsetter case, right? That across the United States, there's going to be more jurisdictions that think a little bit that think that maybe they should start prosecuting cases like this. Yeah, sure, okay. But Michigan law doesn't impact Arkansas law or Texas law or California law or any of these other places. So that's a little bit of a distinction. Colfax 13, there were texts to the mother weeks and months earlier that were concerning. That is interesting. That I did not know from the Jennifer Crumbley trial. Like I said, wasn't following that one nearly as closely. Looper was where is the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the father had knowledge that would allow him to reasonably foresee his son was homicidal? I think that it comes down to the circumstances that were leading up to it, about him knowing the fact that his son was struggling with emotional stuff, him understanding that there's been a lot of sadness in their house between the dog dying, Ethan's grandma dying, and then of course, like I already mentioned, the best friend who is now gone, right? And this also, like, the another aspect of that it wasn't really specifically mentioned in the trial, but something that I definitely thought about was, this is a kid who ended up like being sort of spirited away to get treatment for something. He was getting treatment for OCD issues. And so it could be that was also kind of the sort of glue in their friendship between the two of them, was that they both were struggling with things. So it also may have been this thing that, like, he felt like he didn't have really anyone who could understand the things that he was struggling with other than this friend who was also dealing with things, although maybe different kind of things, but still struggling with something that other people still couldn't understand. But you know, the father's awareness of these things. That's, leading up to the 29th and the 30th. Those are things that continue to color the landscape of like what Ethan's mental state looks like. And then on top of all of that, seeing the math assignment to me should have been a massive red flag. Oh, I'm seeing that the press conference is live now on Fox. What the heck, Law and Crime? Okay, hang on a second. Come on. Why am I not seeing? Sorry, guys. Which Fox is it? Like which Fox channel? Oh, live now from Fox. Live now, Fox. Ah, there we go. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, let me just get this queued up and then we will start watching this.
Ethan's father.
Kind of learning.
Back in.
1 second.
Dying
Here.
to know about.
Criminal trial. We'll see. Thanks for being with us here. We're in a new hour. Prosecutors of this right say it's
not feasible to do whatever the bill is.
on this.
Hang on. Sorry, guys.
First Amendment.
Okay, hang on. Okay, let me pull this on screen. Okay. Let me just try to fast forward here so you guys can at least see what I'm doing. Okay.
Government shutdown once again is.
And what has been a very busy Thursday night. We're going out now live to Oakland County,
There we
Michigan.
go.
The prosecutor there,
There we
Kim
go.
McDonald, just stepped up to the podium with her reaction, her response to the jury's verdict against James Crumbley. Let's watch. She's speaking.
Briefly thank Mark Keast, who was our lead trial attorney. Really, he was. So many individuals in my office, the entire office for 2.5 years. We had assistant prosecutors and victim advocates and investigators standing in line to help us bring justice to these families. And I am forever grateful for all of these people who work in this office and serve our county and our state, because we would not be here without them. So thank you. I want to thank Lieutenant Tim Willis of the Oakland County Sheriff's Office and Special Agent Brett Brandon of the ATF. They were instrumental in this prosecution and conviction. They were devoted, they were dedicated, and I couldn't ask for 2 more law enforcement partners that were as dedicated to victims as these 2 men. Most of all, I'd like to thank the mothers and fathers standing to the right and left of me. It has taken unwavering courage. I will forever remain in awe of their strength and perseverance that they have shown in the last 2.5 years. This verdict does not bring back their children, but it does mark a moment of accountability and will hopefully be another step to address and end and prevent gun violence. These were egregious facts in this case. These parents could have prevented this tragedy that was foreseeable with just the smallest of efforts. They could have prevented this shooting and saved these kids' lives and protected the hundreds of kids in the school that day and all of the members of the Oxford community that it devastated. With just basic, reasonable, ordinary care. This prosecution is important. The 3 prosecutions and convictions are critical. But we will not solve gun violence with these 3 prosecutions. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for children in this country, and it is a public health crisis. And we will not be able to address it until we start treating it like a public health crisis. And yes, access to guns is a critical piece of that, but it's not the only piece. We have to focus on prevention, and that's going to require us to understand and accept that it's not just one thing. It's the #1 cause of death for children in this country. So I refuse to take a victory lap with these prosecutions. It will not bring back these kids. We have a lot more work to do. I've started the commission to address gun violence, and we are working towards a comprehensive approach, and we have hundreds of dedicated people in all different fields to do this. And I hope that this attention that you're focused on this case, one, I hope it is always about victims. I hope the constant naming of these people and photos of them will shift to focus on the people standing here, the victims, the kids in that school, the hundreds of kids with not one mark on them that will forever be changed. Let's focus on those people. Let's focus on what we can do to prevent this from happening again. That's where we should be focusing. That's where we should be working. That's my focus. That's my office's focus. And it will be far after I leave this office, which I'm not planning on doing anytime soon. So
This is where she announces she's
and
running.
finally,
She's running again.
I want to introduce the parents who are standing beside me.
Yeah,
This is one small step.
I will say it does feel a little bit hollow having watched her closing argument, especially the rebuttal where, you know, I talked about this earlier. If you watched the closing arguments with us earlier today, when I did my recap of the last couple days of the trial, her rebuttal left a little bit to be desired. It was okay, but there just was a lot of me, I. It felt like she was kind of taking things a little bit too personally when it's like she needed to take a step back and talk about what the jury needs in order to convict. You know, like that's what they really needed in that instance. And so it just felt a little bit too much like she, in her mind, this case was a little bit about her. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue on with it.
Step of accountability, but they want more accountability. And I am proud to stand with them in that endeavor. I'm not going to say their names. I'm going to tell them who you are, tell you who they are. Madison Baldwin's mother, Tate Mears' father, Hannah's father, and Justin's father. They're standing here with me today, and I invite them to make remarks if they want to. But first, if Lieutenant Tim Willis would like to make some remarks. Would you like to make some remarks?
No, thank you.
Okay. He does not want to make remarks.
No, thank you.
He's like, no, thanks. I've spoken enough during this
Would you like
trial.
to speak, Steve? Nicole?
So first of all, I just want to thank Prosecutor McDonald and Prosecutor Keese for the marvelous job that they've done putting in the long hours, them and their team, as well as Lieutenant Willis, Agent Brandon, and the whole law enforcement team that got us to this point. But we're not done. as Ms. McDonald said, these are just the beginning steps. There is so much more that absolutely must be done. It's crazy the way that our society is currently reacting to this. Our children are dying on a daily basis in mass murders. And we do very little about it. We complain about Second Amendment rights, or we say, oh, there's not enough money to put again for mental health issues. You name it, there'll be an argument against it. It's the #1 killer of our kids, folks. We can put people on the moon. We can build skyscrapers, huge monuments like the Hoover Dam, and we can't keep our kids safe in schools. I think people just need to wake up and take action. Stop accepting the excuses. Stop buying the rhetoric. It is not a Democratic or a Republican issue. It's nonpartisan. Do not accept any excuse from any of the politicians. This needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved now. We do not want any other parents to go through what we've gone through. It's as simple as that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Buck Meir, Tate's dad. First of all, I want to thank Karen and Mark, Lieutenant Willis, Special Agent Brandon. We met a couple folks that did some work behind the scenes. You guys obviously busted your tails, and we appreciate it. And I kind of want to echo what Steve was saying here. This is a deep issue, and it's not going to be an easy one to solve. And it's more than the gun. Our kids are not doing well these days. We're in a mental health crisis. So the gun is just a tool. So we got to look at other things other than the gun. We got to see what we can do to support these kids better. And that both parties should be looking at that. This is a nonpartisan issue. We need to solve this because no parent should go through the hell we're going through. And lastly, we've taken care of 3 legs of November 30th. And there's still a 4th leg, and that's the school. And it's time for the school to pony up. It's time to break up that administration country club. And it's time for change. Because we've got 4 kids here dead. And nobody wants to take any accountability. That needs to start tomorrow. Thank you very much.
My name's Nicole Beausoleil. I'm Madison's mom. And I will echo what Steve and Buck has mentioned. I do want to thank the prosecution team, Karen, David, Mark, the advocates, everybody that worked on the case. They have really been that piece that's kind of held us together and really pushed for us and made sure that every step we took, we kept continuing forward. But what I really want to thank is the 3 families that stand with me. This has been a really hard road. And the friendships that I've made with these families are friendships that I wish I didn't have to make the way I did, but these people are some of my best friends, and I thank them more than they will ever know. What I want to say mostly is, yeah, we have a verdict now. We have a guilty verdict for both parents. We have crossed those 3 lines of getting accountability on that end. But right now we have a verdict. We have to execute that verdict. We have to plan for change. We have to reinforce it. This is not just a verdict for attention or media. This is a verdict that actually needs to be put to the platform that it is. How are we gonna use this verdict to actually make that change that needs? We need to start focusing on the school and its failures, the things that they don't want to admit to. That's going to be our next plan for change. They are going to see these families rise up against it, and we will be here fighting every second for our children because they are not allowed to forget any of them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Craig Schilling, Justin's father. I'd like to start out addressing Karen and the prosecuting team. Thank you so much for your hard work. I can't thank you enough for your efforts in all of this. I'm humbled to be in your presence. Thank you. My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm shaking and so nervous to be here, and I appreciate all of you for your time here. And I really can't say enough about the importance of what we just went through. It's a monumental decision, and the verdict was the same. And I believe that moving forward, it's very important as a society to set the right example for our children and future generations, and come together and use our power of thought and our power of emotion and everything. We can change. We can push forward. We can get through the difficulties of life together if we try. We can't turn our heads to these kind of problems that we face today. It's so important to emphasize the necessity of going after and holding those accountable for their insufficiencies, so to speak. That's where we're at. We have to move forward. We've put much behind us, but there's still so much there in front of us. And I stand with everybody, with these families here, and with Karen and the prosecution, and hopefully with many others to work on that change that we need, and to go that extra mile and put forth that extra effort to address these problems. I could never imagine being here, and I don't ever want anybody else to have to be here like this. This is a very difficult thing to go through. But I'm happy to have these people here helping me, and all the advocates, all the community members, everybody that has given so much and helped out so much. I thank you all, and I look forward to the future. Hopefully it's a brighter one. Thank you.
We have time for some brief questions.
Karen?
Yes.
Do you have a message to parents because of these verdicts?
I think it's the message that every single one of us would have before these prosecutions started. you're obligated to use ordinary and reasonable care, and you owe a duty to other kids in that school, in the community, and you're required to exercise ordinary care. It's an egregious set of facts, And, I stood here 2.5 years ago, and I said, this started with one question: where did he get that gun? Where did he get it? And how did he get it? And that is a question that every single one of us as mothers and fathers asked. And that's what has led to the last 2.5 years.
Adrienne Broadus from NBC News. Thank you for your time. Really quickly, now that we have a guilty verdict, how will you use this to create change? And what message do you have to other prosecutors around the country who are looking at what happened here, the history made in Michigan?
I started, and my team started the Commission to Address Gun Violence because I just simply couldn't stomach leaving this endeavor with 3 prosecutions and then calling it a day, knowing that we have done so little as a country to address the #1 cause of death for children in this country. So I implore everybody listening to this is preventable. And access to guns is absolutely a critical part of that, but it's not the only part. It's not the only part. Up until recently, the #1 cause of death for children was automobile accidents. And we have lowered that. How? We've educated the public. We require people to provide car seats. We've made cars safer. We've made roads safer. We know kids, you can't get in a car without your kids saying, put your seatbelt on, don't text and drive. What if we taught kids about guns? What if we taught kids about how to navigate emotional adversity? Programs like that Buck has started, like 42 Strong, where you're making connections with kids and mentoring them and reaching out way before somebody gets into the moment of crisis. And there are good models, which we're going to roll out in our recommendations for threat assessment and crisis intervention. I absolutely applaud these parents for saying what's true. One of these terrible events happens and all we're talking about is the shooter or the people we're prosecuting. But there's so much more. There's so much more. So that's what I'm doing. And I guess the only message I have for other prosecutors is be brave, ask tough questions. And if they don't answer, then keep trying. Because I asked the question, where did he get the gun? And that led to a lot more questions. And that led to disturbing, upsetting, and egregious facts. And I could not stand by and tell these parents that what happened and what we know happened and say, there's nothing I can do about it.
Do you believe that did the jury give any indication about what drove it home for them? Did they tell you anything, that you can share?
No, and we didn't ask. They've worked hard. It's been a long week. They're tired. So no, they didn't.
Do you believe that the gun storage law that we now have, that we didn't have before, do you believe that could facilitate bringing this type of case when necessary, given that there's this new legal duty created?
It wasn't in place when I charged the case, but I think any action by our legislature or communities or schools or employers or organizations that recognizes that we have to use common sense when you're handling a deadly weapon. I grew up with guns in my home. Everyone has a right to own a gun, but with that right, of course, you have to secure it. Nobody with looking at this rationally would say that this set of facts is okay. They just wouldn't. The smallest, littlest of things could have prevented these deaths. And as gun owners and those are my peers, they take that responsibility seriously. But all we really require is basic ordinary care, and it wasn't done here.
Prosecutor, along those lines, you ended up using that cable lock during the rebuttal. How much of a lasting impression do you think that made on the jury?
It made a lasting impression on me when I installed that lock for the first time. and my team, we were all sitting around, and it was it was just very upsetting when I demonstrated that, and it was 10 to 12 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds, and I'm not a police officer, and I'm not an expert in firearms. It's 10 to 12 seconds. And I'm not sure what impact it had on the jury, but it has an impact on me, and I think any parent, and I think for sure these parents standing next to me.
Any idea how many hours your team spent working on the Crumbley cases?
It's been 2.5 years. It was many legal proceedings. I am forever just grateful and impressed with the people. By the way, there's still so many of them. I'm looking at their faces standing here. Investigators, advocates, assistant prosecutors. They, we're public servants. We don't make any more money because we stay late, but we've spent a lot of time here, and I probably don't focus on that enough, because my first thought is, this isn't hardship. This is hardship. This is hardship for these families. So I'm standing in front of a long line of dedicated assistant prosecutors and people in this office who do not complain. We are. It's a privilege to do this, and we know that it can't take the pain away, but it's one small step towards accountability.
One more question.
One more question.
How many chances we'll see charges against any school officials?
We want to hold everyone accountable, but at this time, we just worked for 2.5 years, and you were all had sideline view. It wasn't easy, so we're going to work with. I've made a commitment to these parents, and I'm going to keep it.
I don't think she was ready for that question.
And it really doesn't matter what letters after your name, and nobody cares about that. Most of all, me. I'm going to look at the facts and work with them to get the accountability they deserve. But most importantly, they're not here because they're angry. They're here because they want to prevent someone else being in that position.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you
really
so
dodged
much.
that question. I think the answer is no.
All right, Oakland County Prosecutor there, McDonald, with her reaction, you see.
Okay, so I think the answer was no. They don't plan to prosecute any of the school officials for their role in that. I mean, they definitely wanted them to participate in the trial, to testify willingly and all that kind of stuff. So, she was very uncomfortable with answering that question, basically dodged it, but I think that's probably it. Is she's not going to, no one else is going to be charged. So there, on the statements by the parents, I know that there were some folks that were a little bit rubbed a different way by what seemed like it was turning into sort of a political sort of thing. I don't like getting into politics on this channel. I mean, mostly because the cases that I cover, generally speaking, aren't very political. I mean, the last couple of trials have sort of edged towards that, admittedly. But they've been very interesting cases factually and legally. And that's why I've covered them. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to direct families of the victims, like we're talking about parents of teenagers, when at a press conference like this, usually the parents are going to have an opportunity to speak, right? When their young kids died, or like very close family members, they will have an opportunity to speak, to address the public if they so choose. I mean, because it's, at the end of the day, it's really about the victims, right? And the victims' families. And so I don't begrudge any of them for taking a moment of absolute tragedy and saying, what can we do with this to give this tragedy meaning? It's a very human response, absolutely human response. So, the people saying, what needs to change in this country, if that feels more liberal, if it feels more conservative, okay, fine. But the way that I'm looking at it is these are just human beings who have suffered very greatly, the most unimaginable suffering that you could possibly ever experience as a parent. That it's understandable for them to want to, like I said, take that tragedy and give it meaning, because that's really the only way that any human being can sort of wrap their mind around it, I think. So I don't begrudge them at all for any of the comments that any of those parents made in that statement. So, all right. I think that's going to be about it. It is super late and I still have to get up in the morning. But thank you so much for sticking with me through this, guys. This has been a very, very fast case, but very interesting, factually and legally. I know it's a tough case. And I know that this has been a very emotional one for a lot of people. And folks have all kinds of different perspectives that they are bringing to the table, and I love that. I really appreciate that. Folks that are agreeing and disagreeing in all kinds of ways. I love to see it because it means that we've got a robust chat where people are bringing their real opinions to try to get to the truth with a capital T. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to the folks that are chatting in the live chat or leaving comments in the comment section on the replay. And or if you've just been watching while you're doing something else or lurking or what have you, I appreciate you just the same. Thanks again to the mods as always for helping out with making sure that the community has a pleasant experience agreeing and disagreeing. And not hopefully not taking things personally, not giving things personally. So, all right, guys. I think that about does it for me. Bike Club. Those of you that are new to Bike Club, tomorrow, 10 a.m. East Coast time, we have a casual Friday members only live stream. I hope you can join us for that. Otherwise, we'll see if I can put something out tomorrow as well for some other topic. We'll see. All right, folks. See you in the next video.